Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo. Thank you for choosing the magnificent MongoSlade for all your wrestling information and content. Like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into the video. How y'all doing? This is from the High Times. This is RVD, Matt Sydal, and Paul London discuss WWE's drug testing and POTS impact on pro wrestling. This is by Andrew Ward, and there will be a link in the description. So if you want to read the article, you can. But I'm just going to read this article, do something a little light, and we're going to talk about the various things these guys talking about in this article. This is about weed, so some people might be quite interested in the wrestling and weed discussion. So the world of professional wrestling is grueling on the body and mind. Scripted, but certainly not fake, the injuries incurred during a professional career are often immense. Typically, performers don't have time to heal before the next set of matches, and the miles of frequent travel that accompanies it. Even when performing correctly, falls or bumps in the industry, so to speak, on thinly padded rings leave performers with little to nothing to soften the blows. Wrestling several times each week, many once reached for the bottle, be it alcohol or pills, to dull the pain. The cycle of abuse led to scores of performers passing away at an early age, be it directly or indirectly from their addictions. In recent years, however, pro wrestlers shifted to becoming more health focused, with cannabis playing a part of the for many. This, however, isn't the plant's first foray into the world. Some would say cannabis played a role in killing kayfabe, or the portrayal of wrestling as an unscripted sport. In 1987, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Iron Sheik were arrested after their car was pulled over by New Jersey police. During the stop, Duggan was found to have marijuana on him, while the Iron Sheik had cocaine. Two athletes caught with drugs in the 80s would usually be a headline maker on its own. However, the revelation that Duggan and the Iron Sheik weren't heated enemies as billed in the ring pulled back a significant portion of the curtain, masking the long assumed staged aspects of wrestling. Neither Duggan nor the Iron Sheik provided comments for this article. However, High Times did speak with several pro wrestling veterans who spent years in various promotions, including the most notable name in the profession, World Wrestling Entertainment. In each case, they mentioned how the leader in the sport continues to hold much more conservative views towards marijuana than other promotions. They'd also left out here that I think Duggan and the Iron Sheik were both fired for breaking kayfabe. Okay, so the part one, the locker room outcast in WWE. Marijuana used to never seem to be a concern in wrestling, even finding its way into the characteristics of some performers. Current examples include the pot-smoking, high-flying trio of Impact Wrestling, the Rascals. In and out of the ring, their actions can be traced back to the person that popularized cannabis in the square circle, Rob Van Dam. I hate the Rascals, by the way. They are so fucking annoying. Best known as RVD, the wrestling legend continues to rack up numerous accolades, including 16 titles with WWE and promotions like Extreme Championship Wrestling and Total Nonstop Action, and various others. It was in ECW where Van Dam would establish a reputation for smoking with fans before events. That's irresponsible. Around 1997, at a show in Queens, he spotted an RVD 420 sign and ran with the gimmick. I just immediately identified with it, said Van Dam, adding, I thought I would love to be the poster boy for weed because I love weed that much. Fans loved the gimmick, but it wouldn't travel to the more corporate world of the World Wrestling Entertainment, known as the World Wrestling Federation, when Van Dam signed in 2001. Negative instances, including a time around 2001 when current WWE Chair Brand Officer Stephanie McMahon gave him a heads up. She said, look, if you're going to get high, at least be discreet about it, Van Dam said. McMahon told him to at least change his shirt because of the pungent aroma. That's fucking nuts. He smelled like weed so strongly that she told him to go change clothes. God damn. I wonder what year this was. Despite the not so subtle condemnation of cannabis, RVD continued consuming and discussing its use. Likening himself to a Bible thumper, Van Dam said, I used to be an advocate for the perspective of feeling like I knew something that everyone else needed to know. Like RVD, Paul London didn't start using marijuana until he got into pro wrestling. In fact, it was RVD who offered him his first hit. London recalls being 24 or 25 when wrestler Jamie Noble invited him to smoke weed with RVD. That night would cement London's fondness for Van Dam. It's kind of like being taught how to sing by Elvis, said London. That's quite the compliment. Well, I guess that depends on your opinion of Elvis. I don't like Elvis. So I guess it would be like being taught to sing by Anita Baker. In time, he would become a regular consumer, often running off to smoke with veterans like Van Dam, Sabu, and others, including tag team partner at the time Brian Kendrick. London told High Times that WWE management seemed to have issues with cannabis users due to their inability to fall in line with company rules. London described the group of smokers as the guys that are going to see through WWE's bullshit. It's kind of hard to see through somebody's bullshit when you're literally hallucinating. Like, that's what cannabis does. But if that makes you feel better, Paul. I mean, Paul is very bitter about his firing from WWE. He's kind of been that way. But the idea that he uses drugs is kind of like he was playing the White Rabbit in Lucha Underground last time I saw him. I don't know what he's been doing since. But it should be no surprise that Paul London likes to get high. So part 2, a momentum killer for many. London said that in early days of his time in the company, $500 fines were given for positive cannabis tests. However, more severe punishments did occur. In July 2006, the then dual world championship holder RVD was arrested with 18 grams of marijuana and 5 Vicodin. As a result, Van Dam had to drop both his titles in quick succession on that Monday and Tuesday's TV shows. From there, he was suspended. He was further reprimanded with a 30-day suspension. No trial, nothing, said RVD, noting his suspension coincided with the downfall of the WWE revived ECW brand. It was way better before I got busted. When I came back, it was going downhill fast to its ultimate destruction. RVD, well, it wasn't mentioned, it's not mentioned here, but RVD says in a different interview that he told WWE not to give him the title because he was going to fuck it up. And I wanted to find that piece because I'm pretty sure I had it somewhere. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this is from TalkSport. This is just a little aside about Rob Van Dam and his drug arrest. Because I knew I saw something about this that was really interesting that I wanted to talk about, but I just kind of decided just to fold it into this interview. So RVD was talking to Stone Cold Steve Austin apparently, and TalkSport gave a transcript of what he's saying. So RVD said, I should have slowed down that night going through Ohio with 18 grams of weed in my bag. I was speeding, dude. I was so careless back then. Like, I've grown up so much since then that when I think about when I worked for WWE, I think it was the perspective that I had as a kid. I felt like I had to go through some real life emotion before my whole perspective changed. I used to be so careless. I didn't even know there were speed limits. The reason it made such big news was because I had the WWE Championship and the ECW Championship. So there was a lot of riding on me at the moment because ECW had just came back as a third brand, trying to get momentum, and I'm the champion. And then Van Dam said, for everybody who says how much I was held back and how wrong that was for my career, first off, I gave them plenty of chances to not put me on the forward foot and plenty of warnings that I would fuck it up. And then when I did finally get the championship, I fucked it up. Okay, so I thought that was really interesting. So let's go back to the High Times article. Because I'm glad that RVD has grown up. I mean, it's been 14 years since he was the champion. I mean, come on, let's be real about it. You know, he's pretty smart. He has to know if you get busted with drugs, it's not going to work out for you. And it wasn't just him, because we know that Jack Swagger, same thing. He was probably going to win the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania against Alberto Del Rio. He got busted with drugs. He made it to the match with Del Rio, but he ended up losing. And then he never got back to that point. And it also didn't help that Fox News complained about the gimmick. But back to the article, like I said. So a similar outcome would happen to London. This is from the High Times article, just in case you get lost. A similar outcome would happen to London. The following year, for over 300 days, he and Kendrick were holders of the WWE Tag Team Championship titles. This is SmackDown Tag Team titles, by the way. London, they were a fantastic team. Fuck, I love London and Kendrick as a tag team. They are fucking awesome. London said management discussed allowing the team to hold the titles for 1 year, a milestone in the sport. However, on April 16th, 2007, London's birthday, He said then producer Fit Finley spotted London, RVD, and Sabu smoking outside by the production trailer after London's match in Italy. Sensing friction, London claims to have attempted to smooth things with Finley, but the damage appeared done. The tag team would drop the titles a few nights later. London recalled management telling him, "I think we're going to change have to have you guys drop the belts tonight because we haven't done a title switch in this country, in this building, for a long time." However, on the night London claims to have been busted, Santino Marella would beat Umaga in the same Milan arena for the Intercontinental title. Ooh, that's a rough one, dog. Well, they had to do that because Santino got slapped by Jim Cornette, so you had to do something. You had to do something to keep the guy from fucking suing or something. Okay, so now we get into part 3, the mental effects of testing and failing. Around 2007, when Matt Sydal signed with WWE, Matt Sydal was awesome too. You know, he had no personality whatsoever, but he was awesome. The company faced immense backlash from the Chris Benoit murder-suicide. In turn, the company increased the scrutiny of all substances. Under the new rules, fines were $1,000 for each positive cannabis drug test. Sydal, who wrestled in WWE as Evan Bourne, said offenders would find themselves in monthly drug testing cycles as well. Sydal, a self-medicating cannabis consumer since college, fell into the cycle soon after its implementation. Right away in my developmental stage at wrestling with WWE, it sort of became an issue of me having to play the game of, can I smoke today, or am I worried about getting the test? Sydal recalled feeling stressed over wanting to treat his ailments, both in-ring and pre-existing, while knowing that he could lose a dream job. The consequences were extremely steep, and the psychological consequences were even harder, recalled Sydal. He stated his positive test made him feel condemned by the organization, almost like an outsider. It hurt my self-confidence because a failure implied that I was a person with a bad moral character. Cannabis supposedly put people like Sydal and London on the outside, while drinking was harm. I felt like I was almost ostracized and persecuted for my personal choices, Sydal said. The cannabis test, coupled with his smaller than WWE average stature, created an uphill battle in winning the company's favor. That latter part, most definitely. Because we already know that Matt was not the only one smoking weed, right? We know he wasn't, but he was like paper thin. So people were like really hard on him. But I like Matt Sydal, you know. I don't know what the hell he's doing now, though. All considered, Sydal said he never took the test personally, noting the company's ongoing shift into the billion-dollar publicly traded entity it is today. However, the feelings of being on the outside would only increase after a second failed test. Sydal remembered, after each failed test, I felt more like a failure, and I had no clue how to handle that shame. Already sidelined with an injury and nearing the end of his run with the company, Sydal sustained a severely broken foot in March of 2012. Wanting not to exacerbate the matter, he abstained from marijuana or any other substances during recovery. That sobriety will continue for years, as too did his struggles with self-worth. Sometimes after his release in June 2014, he was in WWE that recently? I thought he got released in 2012 or 2013 or something like that. That's kind of crazy. Sydal found himself in Iquitos, Peru, where he embarked on a 3-week sacred plant medicine treatment that he said restored his sense of self. This dude went and took some peyote or something. Like, he went and took some of that shit that what the fuck are they called? The pygmies in Africa, the shit that they pop. He went and took that shit. All right, part 3 or 4, whatever. A continued practice with cannabis. All 3 respondents continue to participate in both pro wrestling and cannabis use. London has stepped back towards acting, though wrestling remains an option for the right promotion and fit. Sydal can be found on the independent scene, including prominent promotions around the world. He recently reopened his wrestling school in Florida after the COVID-19 pandemic halted operations. The ring veteran reported that he continues to feel pain from his foot injury and has his medical cannabis card. RVD can be seen weekly on Impact Wrestling. The longtime proponent is involved in the cannabis industry as well, with his RVD CBD line. Van Dam said he aims to offer a product geared towards treating severe injuries like his own. The company plans to expand into THC as well. Van Dam believes that the wrestling industry shift to cannabis will undoubtedly improve its once grim mortality rate. It's a lot more professional, RVD said of the current locker room. It's more like a corporation instead of an outlaw indie show like it used to be. So this was a pretty good article. I love this article. I think Val Venus also sells some kind of cannabis-related substances. Now, you probably noticed from this article there was no mention of one Randy Orton. Now, Randy Orton, of course, has routinely been busted smoking weed. But on one of the instances that he actually did get caught smoking weed, he also got caught for steroids. So it wasn't exactly the same thing. I forget which one it was. It might have been his second, where he tested positive for weed. Then they tested him again, and then he tested positive for diagonal, which is a steroid. Now, my personal is I don't do weed. I don't really fuck around with it. I've never really known, all of my interactions with people who have smoked weed have been mostly negative. But as a libertarian, I don't give a shit about what people want to put in their own bodies, as long as it's not gonna make you irresponsible. Which, depending on when you smoking, it could be. But the same thing applies to alcohol, and I would rather people smoke weed than pop pills, though. That pill shit is not good. I would literally judge a pill head. Like that needs to stop. Those people who take those painkillers, man, that shit will kill you so fast. That shit is bad. That and them powders. So heroin, cocaine, the fucking pills. I would rather a guy smoke weed all day than fuck around with them pills. But I'm not really a drug guy. But what do you guys think of this video? What do you guys think of this conversation? Like, guys, of course, smoked weed back in the day in wrestling. It was not, I think Hugo Savinovich used to talk about him. He used to talk about getting high with the various wrestlers. Of course, Shawn Michaels was big on the drugs. But I think Rob Van Dam was the first person to really kind of lean into it. And WWE is sort of kind of starting to lean into it a little bit with Matt Riddle, where they're kind of playing up the hey bro, stoned version of his character. They're kind of leaning into it. So maybe their idea of drug usage is evolving. Obviously it is. I don't really see why they would even give guys fines for marijuana anymore. I don't even see why that would be necessary. They might as well just say fuck it. Like, I'm a person that also believes, and I'm going to the extreme, that you might as well just let guys take steroids if they want to. I think that if a guy wants to take steroids, he want to smoke weed, I don't care. Guy cannot come to work drunk, and the guy can't come to work off pills. That automatically that shit is out. But if a dude is high on weed, probably not. But it's not as bad as if a dude is on fucking pills or if he's drunk. That shit is dangerous. It's straight up like being impaired. Period is dangerous. But that shit is bad. But let me know what you guys think about this video and this article. I thought it was interesting. Figured I'd share it with you guys. Let me know. Let me reiterate. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you later.